Hey, everybody. And for once, I think I paid enough attention when the little live thing came up that I got it right away. Here's hoping, anyway. Because that's like, we all know I get mesmerized by the little spinny thing that says we're going live soon, and then I completely miss it. I don't know why that is. Anyway, it is October 27th, Wednesday of 2021, and it's 3:00 p.m., which means it's time for Women in Business. Now, we only have a limited time with our guest today, so I'm going to read her bio and get her on here right away. So you don't have to listen to me talk because who wants to do that? So Sheila Ryan has been a lifelong maker and sewist. When her youngest child went to school, it was finally time to kick her business into high gear, and she started embroidering personalized gifts and selling them on Etsy. As her embroidery obsession grew stronger, and I will learn how to read one of these days, she was determined to give embroidery digitizing a solid run. So she dove deep into learning all she could about digitizing custom embroidery designs that couldn't be found anywhere else. Sheila has a passion for good design and for teaching people how to work with their embroidery machines, embroidery software, and wonderful materials to stitch with. She seeks to elevate the experience of her customers with ridiculously cute embroidery designs, and they are ridiculously cute, and offer creative designs that not only introduce new embroiderers to the craft, but also bring joy and happiness to experienced embroiderers. Believing that there is always something new to learn and make, as well as a better way to do most everything, she spends time with fellow digitizers, that's a hard word to say, celebrating on business building strategies, collaborating, let's try that, on business building strategies, and listening to her customers and clients to really understand what they want to see in new designs. Most recently, Sheila has joined the brand ambassador team at Shannon Fabrics, helping to teach more customers how to successfully use their top-of-the-line Minky fabrics in their sewing projects. And wow, let's bring her on here and say hello. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Christine. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. And thank you for writing your biography in the third person, because most people don't. And then I have to translate it in my head.
My daughter's a writer, and I think that she's really helped with some of that, those technical things that I'm not real good at. So,
well, it's funny because you can always tell people who do enough stuff that they have a professional bio and the ones that don't, because the people that don't tend to write in the first person, and then you have to like translate all the pronouns in your head while you're introducing them. Something right. That you may find out when you do your podcast, which I want to talk about today.
Oh,
but the first thing that I want to talk about was something that we were talking about just before the show started, and I liked it enough that I was like, we got to talk about this on the show, which is the fact that when you get to a certain point in your career, which I think we're both at, you get noticed by people and people know who you are. And that's a good thing and a lovely thing when people are nice to you, but sometimes they're not. And sometimes even if they're just coming to you to ask a question or something, the little gremlins in your brain go, well, you suck. So I wanted to ask you about that because I think how you deal with it, because I think this is a problem a lot of women deal with.
Well, it really is. And that whole, it's a mindset thing, and it takes a lot of work. I mean, So I'm about the same age you are. And, what happens in about midlife time is you start reevaluating like all of the things, like, how did you get here? Why are you here? What are you going to do with the rest of your life, with the rest of whatever time you have left? And, so several years ago, it was really important to me to get some of those things that were swirling around kind of constantly for all of my life to really get those dealt with. Mm-hmm. And not that I've accomplished it completely, but I've been doing a lot of really hard work, because that's one of my things. And I don't know if it's a voice from like grandparents or from growing up or from childhood trauma. I don't know where it comes from. It's just the thing that I've always dealt with, that voice of not being good enough. And it pops up and it kind of like jabs me when I get an email from somebody who, from anybody. I mean, like and it's basically like, you're not doing it right. You're not good enough. You haven't. Right. And so I also have like anxiety too. That's a new thing that I've realized that I have. And so that's part of my puzzle. And so as I figured those things out, and I've really worked to try to understand what's going on in my heart and my brain, and how those things are working together so that I can run a business, I've really had to like step back and see when somebody, if somebody really has a valid concern, like, did I really not do that well? Or is it really just my old scripts running in the back of my head that kind of are tricking me into not believing the truth of what's actually out there in front of me? So I think that whole process it's been really good for me as a, just for my own self. If I wasn't running a business or anything, it's good for me to do that work and to exercise that, because I deserve to be here as much as anybody else. And I would tell all kinds of other people, but believing that for myself is a totally different thing. And that's a really hard place to get to. But it's also one of the things why I really love what you do, because, as women, we tend to minimize ourselves to take up the smallest possible amount of space. And that's not really how we were. I don't feel like that's really what I'm supposed to do. And for me, I have 4 girls, and I need to teach them that their space in the future world, in the world that they're in now, but also in the future world, it's as big as they need it to be. Like, they can take up all of the space that they need to. And so if I minimize myself and if I don't do that work now, then I'm not going to be a good coach for them.
Oh, I love that. I really love that, because I have had the same thing as you in that I struggled with my old scripts for a really, really long time. I mean, like decades, where I look back now and I put something up on LinkedIn the other day where I said, damn, I wish I'd figured all this stuff out 20, 30 years ago, even though the technology didn't really exist 30 years ago but I wish I had gotten that sooner, but I had to do the work to get to be this person, if that makes sense.
Sure. It really does. I think that if I had started 20 years ago doing this kind of a public, it's really kind of a public thing thanks to the internet. I don't know that I would be as confident doing it, having to grow through all the things that the internet went through to get here. Does that make sense? That was totally all so very new. And I remember, we had bulletin board email groups, which were really fun, but they were still very anonymous. There wasn't this face interaction, Facebook, face to face kind of thing that we can do now. And I wasn't ready for that. I wouldn't have been able to do this until I got, a bunch of that dealt with. So it's a good time.
Yeah, I remember forums. I started out in forums, and forums were huge for a while. And I was on a lot of them when I started working with Enmart eons ago and all that stuff. But yeah, I kind of feel the same way, that I kind of had to make my peace with the fact that I had to go through some stuff to get to the place where I could be comfortable doing the stuff that I'm doing now. And then I could also deal with if somebody doesn't like what I'm doing, or they're negative about something, or they're angry about something, where I could put that in its proper space, I guess, because I think as women, we tend to internalize a lot of that, or feel like somehow we caused it, or it's our responsibility to make it better. And sometimes it's just like, you know what, this person's an asshole, and that's just life,
Right. And it's okay. We don't have to make up for that person's stuff. They can just be like that, and it's okay. We don't have to fix it.
And that was a huge lesson for me to learn, because I was raised to be the caretaker and the fixer. So I was like, I'm going to make it all better for everybody all the time. Yeah. And it's
are you the firstborn in your house?
Yes.
Me too. And so I think that's a really common thing that firstborn children struggle with, having to fix it, having to take care of things, and
being overachievers.
Oh yeah, all of it, which is It's funny. So, I mean, I have a bunch of kids, and we have groups of kids. Like so I technically have 2 kids that act like, well, 3 that act like firstborn kids, because they're like, I have a firstborn boy and I have a firstborn girl. And then I have a firstborn of another set of kids that acts like a firstborn too. So I have 3 firstborn children. But I really have to, I see my job more as not, I think, it's not a parenting thing necessarily. There are people in the world learning how to be in the world. So really it's more of a coaching thing for them, because they're going to lead groups of people. They're going to be in the workforce. They may have families to help lead and all of those things. So my job, like whatever I set in place now, those are their patterns that they may have to overcome later. And so I have to be really careful about how I coach them in their firstbornness so that they don't make the same kind of mistakes that I do, even though I'm totally aware that they will have their own things that they've got to get over. I joke with my kids that they have a therapy fund already set aside.
I love it.
We kind of normalize those conversations at my house. But, I'm just really proud of him. My he's 10, he's 9. I don't know how old he's little. He's in 5th grade, and he told me yesterday what he wanted to do. Like, this was just a random conversation. He just said when he grows up, he wants to be somebody that helps people with their feelings. Well, he's never been to therapy, and he's never been.
I like that.
But he has an awareness that people need support and structure. And so I was like, what do we need to do to get you there? We'll get you there. Like,
I love it.
We'll help you find that path. But, I'm just so proud that that conversation is a normal conversation in our house, and there's not a stigma around it, mainly because we do have people in our house that need therapy. I need therapy. I mean, I go to regular therapy, and, all of the things to help my brain do the things that it needs to do so we can survive.
I think that's one thing that really has made great strides since I was growing up, is the attitude toward mental health and therapy, and just and even as far as acknowledging that kids are their own distinct personalities instead of like adjunct little parent clones, Right. I mean, when I grew up, you didn't talk about a kid having wants or needs or anything. It was like, that at least it wasn't acknowledged a lot around the people that I knew. So I'm like, but I have to laugh, because one of the things that you said when you said you had to figure out how to help these kids, grow and be the best. I'm like, that's exactly why I never had children, because I was always so scared.
Well, when I found out, I thought it would be fine when I had a boy, but when I found out I was having a girl, I was like, oh no. Because women are different, like our brains work differently. Yeah. And I just thought, how am I going to do that? And I say that as somebody that loved hanging out with the guys and always wanted to be one of the guys. To have a girl was terrifying to me. And I say that she's an amazing person, and I don't know that I had anything to do with it other than I provided her a house and a place to live. And
right.
She is, I mean, all my girls are incredible people, and I'm the one that is honored to get to be their mother. I didn't pick that. They just happened, and that I got anything to do with it is just a gift,
Well, I mean, I think anybody who's a parent always has my admiration, because I think it's a very brave thing to do. But honestly, I just never had the desire, really. But part of it was because I was just looking at, there's these fragile little people that would be my responsibility. And I don't even want a cat, man.
When our firstborn when he was born, he was a hospital birth. And I remember like the nurses left me alone in the room with him. And I'm like, what do I do? I don't even know how to hold this thing. So yeah, I figured it out. We have 9 kids, and I think
wow, that's
I learned
a lot of
some
kids.
things. It's a lot of kids. I don't know where they Yeah, I do know. But it was kind of I think somebody told me you can't do that. And I said, oh yeah, watch me.
So wait a minute here. Well, first I want to put a comment up. I don't know who put this up because it's showing Facebook user, but it says, you are correct in the fact that the firstborns always want to fix things. I never realized that about myself, but it's true. So see, we've already created an insight. Yay. But okay, so here's where I want to go with this now. You have 9 children and you run a business.
Yes.
How? Can you give us some like time management tips or sanity tips or something? I don't know.
There were like so many really good things that came out of COVID, but before COVID, I feel like I was on this really fun track, and then COVID, and then everybody came home. So I didn't really start my business until my littlest one he actually went to preschool. So a couple of days where he was going to preschool, the only kid that we sent to preschool, but he needed people. And when all of his other siblings went to school, he's the guy, he will talk all day long. And I couldn't talk all day long. Like I can talk here, but after this I'm done and I will have no more words. That's it. I'm done. And this kid just needed people. He needed, I have this picture I took of him lining up his stuffed animals to have a tea party with them. And it was one of the stuffed animals' birthday. And it was the saddest thing ever because he's like talking to his stuffed animals all by himself. And I'm not going to play. I'm not going to sit. I got stuff to do. I'm not going to sit and play tea party with the stuffed animals. And so he went to school and he's done great. Like he loves to be around people. And when he went to school, I had all this time to really figure out what I wanted to do. So I started doing the personalized embroidery things. When he went to school full time as a kindergartner, I really had more time, and I figured out what I really wanted to do was digitize embroidery designs, which takes a different kind of brain work. And so I had quiet, I had time, I had a long time during the day, and that's what I did. And it's just been really good. When COVID hit and everybody came home, as a mom, I was really excited because all my kids were home. I mean, like even my college kids were home because their campuses were closed, and we were all fighting over the internet, and I didn't have that time anymore to do my thing as much as I wanted to. And I had to kind of go back to this time when I only had little kids. So way back in the very beginning of our, I would, you have to do the stuff with your kids, and we were homeschooling then, and I love to make, and I need to do something that's my creative outlet. And if I don't do that, then I get really, I'm not good. Like I'm not good for the world if I can't get these things out. And sewing was my thing back then. I was making a lot of baby clothes and sewing. And so I made a rule that I couldn't do any sewing until 2:00 because that's when I could give the kids, we were homeschooling. So I really needed to go through some lessons with them and make sure everybody had eaten and make sure things were taken care of in the house, which none of that I'm really good at, but I really like to sew. And so I was really motivated for that time of the day. So when COVID hit, I kind of had to set a schedule like that again. And by 2:00 in the afternoon, everybody was done with their Zooms. They had all pretty much eaten and they could have free time, and then I could work again. But it gave me time to really consider this is what I want to keep doing. And so as soon as this is all over, I can kick it back up into high gear and get back to normal. And so thank goodness things are opening up here. And so my kids are all actually in school at the moment as of today. So don't know what the future holds.
Cross that it keeps going that way.
Yeah. But it's there are some scheduled things. Like there's I'm a night owl too, so getting up to get everybody out the door in the morning is not my favorite thing to do. But my kids like going to school, and so they love being around people, and they like what I do, and they understand that what I do requires this brain time, and so they're actually really they're a good team to have with me. I don't know what I'll do. Well, I know what I'll do when I won't be doing laundry all day when they're not here, but when they're all gone and grown and doing their own thing and able to take care of themselves, I'll still have plenty of my own things to do,
Well, then you'll get grandkids, and that's a whole new level of.
I do hear that those are fun. So we'll see.
My mother really approved of grandkids, and thank God my sister had her kids early. So I was like, I don't have to deal with when am I going to have grandkids anymore? Because my sister popped out 3, and it was like, good, you play with those.
I actually have I remember saying out loud to several people, like that had all these things that I was going to do with my life, and it was early on, and I said, I'm not ever having kids. So here we are, and we just managed to work around it. So.
Well, I mean, if it's, I just never, like I said, I never had the desire. Did you get, when you said you didn't have kids, did you get a lot of people, or you didn't want to have kids? Did you get all the people who said, just wait until you meet the right man and then you'll totally want to have kids? I was like, I don't think so.
Yeah, I did get that too. And even after my husband and I were married, there were a lot of years that we got the, what's wrong with you for not having kids? And at that point we were ready, and then we just couldn't. And so it took us several years to get one. And after that, it was like, that was so hard that it was like, if another kid was coming, I wasn't going to turn it away. And then my body just figured out what to do, obviously. But there was a lot of that, what's wrong with you? Because you don't have any children yet. And
yeah, I'm familiar, which I think is really sad in a way, because I think whatever choice you make is a valid choice. If you decide that you don't want to have kids, and or like you guys you had some issues with getting pregnant or whatever it was. I mean, those kind of questions are so intrusive sometimes. I think it's like, is it any of your business what I'm doing or not doing? Or, why does it matter to you?
Right. Exactly. And we had all kinds of creative responses. Not all of them were kind or generous.
Well, I imagine if it was something that went on for a while, it was like after a while, you just get over the point where it's hard. It's kind of hard to be like kind when people are being insensitive and kind of jerky about it. It's like, you know what? I just look at people now and say, well, that was never something I wanted. Why do you care?
Yeah. Do you think that that's more accepted now? Do you feel like that? Or do you...
the number of people that assume that I have kids or grandkids is astronomical. Most people, and it could be because of what I look like, because I kind of look like, your suburban mom from somewhere, and which is just how I look. But I mean, the number of people that assume that I had a guy try to pick me up in a bar once. And he was talking to me about my kids and my grandkids, and my friends that were with me were just letting him hang himself. And then one of my guy friends looked at him and said, she doesn't have any kids. And the guy was like, oh, and he was really apparently getting off on this fantasy that he was going to score hot mom or something. I don't know.
Come with the whole package. But that's the thing. Like you're enough as you are, whether you've got kids or not.
Well, I think it's a cultural thing too. It's kind of, women are still told that that's supposed to be what you want. And if it is what you want, that's awesome. And if it fulfills you and makes you happy, I think that's great. There's really, I don't think, any higher calling in the world than to raise the next generation. It's just, I didn't know that I would ever be good at it. So I was like, I'm not going to inflict myself on any children. But anyway, I don't know. That's probably a show I need to do at some point, because I think it's there's an interesting, weird kind of discomfort with women who say, I never really wanted kids. I don't know. It seems to make a lot of people uncomfortable.
Well, I know I made a lot of people mad when I used to say that. And then, then they, at the point where we were having kids, and then we kept having kids, then there's a whole other kind of mad, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, you told me I couldn't. So now I have to. So
now I'm going to have as many as I, well, I mean, I'm just floored that you have, I mean, even if there's an age spread, 9 kids is a lot of kids to be managing, and
Yeah.
then having a business on top of it. And then you said you were homeschooling too. I'm like, holy crap, man.
No, I think the business is like what I really wanted to do. That was kind of my escape. But at the same time too, we were going through a rough patch as a family, and I needed to do something to bring in income. And I had not been working since I stopped working. I was managing a little retail store, and when 2 months before my son was born. Okay, so I had been out of the workforce for years, and that's all. And so because I had kept having kids, it was a long time. I mean, he was 16 or 17 when I finally went back to work. Now he just graduated college, so he's fine. He's on his own. He's doing all his own things. But it was a long time, and I didn't have, I mean, I have a college degree and I had good work experience before kids, but I didn't have really any work experience. So I was like, what am I going to do? And you know, all that career stuff's like, what do you like to do? What are you interested in? What are you trained for? And I was like, well, I really, really, really like sewing. And I always, as a little kid, was trying to figure out how I could make stuff and sell it. And I was like, well, I'll give it a shot and see what happens. And I mean, thank goodness for the internet, right? Because I met up with a group of people that were making things and selling them online. And, you know, so it worked. And there was an avenue for that. And I think that's why the timing of everything is just so perfect. Because I wouldn't have been able, I don't know how I would have been able to do that through like a Yahoo group or a bulletin board. You know, I'm sure there were ways. But
some of the things had to mature enough to be able to. Yeah. I mean, you know, like what we're doing now, even, you know, 5 years ago, we wouldn't probably been able to do this because the technology wasn't really there.
Right. Right. And now we all have webcams and, you know,
and
like
now
everybody
we're all doing lives. I mean, one of my classes for Applique Getaway is going to be how to do a podcast.
Oh, good. I'm going to take that one. So I said we were going to do a podcast, and then, you know, there's all the things that you don't know, like you don't know what you don't know. And we thought it would be a way to help bring a new kind of content to the arena of this embroidery design world. And oh my goodness, but there are so many things that I've had to learn, like I've had all the Adobe products on, and I knew how to I guess, I mean, that's all stuff you could hire out, but I need to know how to do it myself. And then I could decide if I want to hire it out, but I want to do it myself because I have control over it. And so, you know, learning to make the intros and the outros, and then all the tech stuff to get set up. And then where do you put the podcast? And all of it has been a huge learning curve that I didn't expect when I just said, oh, let's do a podcast. I'm like, oh, let's do a podcast.
So it's called the Rethread Podcast, by the way. The URL is up on the screen for their website, and it's you and Karenna Lipkowitz
and Kimberly Miller, who's with Hug Longer Designs, and Grace Olmos, who is with her website's called Amazing Grace Designs. And so we're all embroidery digitizers, but we all have like a little bit of different, you know, the way we come into the digitizing world is a little bit different. And so we're going to talk about digitizing. We're going to talk about embroidery. We're going to talk about making and selling. We're going to talk about crafty things. So it ought to be really fun. I mean, you know, you've hung out with enough of us makers a long time. You know, we could talk about our stuff all day long.
So is it just, it's going to be the four of you and you're not going to try to do guests or anything, or?
Well, we'd like to bring guests on. So that's we have a long list of topics, so we have plenty of content to get through.
Right.
So bringing on people to hang out with us and to talk about, you know, what they're making or how they're selling it, or there's so many possibilities. I hope we have enough time.
Well, that's, you know, honestly, having a group is a nice idea, because I think then you always have someone to talk to. You know, if there's four of you, it's like, even if one person has to be somewhere else, you'll still have the core group there, because that's one of the things with being a solo show like this one. If I don't have a guest, it's just me being a talking head for an hour. But
do you feel like sometimes I feel like I guess that's what kind of spurred me to do like the teaching videos that I do, because really when you're teaching, you have to get yourself in the head, like, even if nobody's there, I'm going to try to do a good job on this and teach
right.
somebody something. And I think if you locked me in a room, I still might be talking about my stuff.
That's the funny thing about, in a weird way, the solo ones are kind of nice because I don't have to worry about anything except looking at the camera and talking, and if I'm feeling passionate about something, I can have a little rant and but everybody does their own thing. There's something to be said, I think, for having partners in a podcast too, because then it's not all sitting on you.
Yeah.
So
well, and I think too, with us doing this together, we're part of a larger group of embroidery digitizers and teachers that really feel like there is room for other people to do what we do. There's room to bring them in. There's room to help them along. And that rising tide raises all boats kind of thing.
Aaron saying,
it's there's plenty of room to help other people along in that. And I think when we do that together, we communicate that just by being 4 different people in 4 different businesses coming together and, supporting not only our customers, although that's really, really important, but other people that want to be in that same space that we're in too. So when I first started digitizing, one of the things that I was really, really aware of was the competitiveness of the field. And in reality, there are more people that want to learn how to do embroidery or want to get involved than any of us altogether could help at the same time or provide designs for or training. And so if we can't all reach everyone. And so there's always a need for somebody with a different twist to things or a different way of teaching or explaining things. There's plenty of room for that. So
I love that attitude, because I think you're right. And the other thing that I think is really cool too is that you 4 that are doing the Rethread podcast, you guys are good digitizers. And I think there also are, I don't want to say that there are bad digitizers out there, but there are less skilled, perhaps we'll say it that way, digitizers out there. And so the public needs to be educated about what's good digitizing and what you get when and what your digitizer should be thinking about and all that kind of stuff. And that's important too.
Yeah, well, I hope so. And among that group, I'm kind of like the baby in the group. I think I am I'm the youngest. I know I'm the youngest in there. And so their experience in digitizing, one of the girls, Karina, has been using Wilcom software and was teaching it before I even had an embroidery machine in my house. She's been in the industry for a very long time and knows things. That girl, and they all do. Grace knows things, Kimberly knows things, Karina knows things. And I just talk a lot.
Well, I have a couple comments here I wanted to pull up. Evelyn says, yes, thank you. Room for everyone, which I think she's right. And Cindy says everyone has their own unique style in digitizing, which I think is also true. So I just like the idea of the podcast. I think when is the first one coming out? Do you have a release date yet?
Not yet, but it's supposed to be in October. So I have been working on it, but it is, there are, like I said, there are things that we didn't know that we know now that we have to overcome. So hopefully,
but they can find it here.
Yes. And they can actually sign up for our newsletter so that when the first one's out, they'll find it.
They'll
right
know.
Away. Yeah.
So go there and sign up for the newsletter, and then you can get notified when the first one is out. And that will be very exciting. Well, I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch day, and there is one thing, just because I'm the director of marketing and outreach for Applique Getaway, that I really want to talk about.
Oh, I love to talk about Applique Getaway.
And that's virtual Applique Getaway, because that's coming up and we are both doing classes for it.
Oh, it's going to be so fun.
Really excited about that. So I'm going to put, if you want to register for that, you can go here. But what I want to talk about is what you think the value of the virtual is. I mean, I know we love actual, but what's the value of the virtual?
The value of the virtual is that you could stop and rewind and replay, and have it and watch it over and over again until the information really sinks in. When you go to any live session, unless you're recording it yourself, once the information comes and then it goes, and you may not have gotten it all here or down on paper or however you were collecting that information, it's just gone. And with the virtual one, we can really replay it. I know I even did that with the last virtual Applique Getaway, which was so fun. As I got to replay things, and as someone who has taught in person at Applique Getaway, the teachers don't always get to go to all the classes, and which is, we're not there to go to the classes. We're there to teach, and we're there to meet customers and to network. But going to classes is fun too. We like that. So with the virtual, all of the teachers get to attend the classes as well. And because we all have things that we can learn from each other. So I'm very excited about another virtual getaway. And I'm glad that y'all decided to do another one.
I'm excited about it too. But one of the things I think it's pretty well known that this was my first Applique Getaway in person this July. And the level of enthusiasm for learning that comes with that trade show is just, the classes, I think, were almost more exciting than people going to the booths and buying stuff for a lot of people. Yeah. Did you get that in your classes too?
I did. Well, it's kind of a mix, because the booths are so much fun too, because you get to interact with the people that are bringing you things. And then I didn't teach classes last year, but I taught classes in years past at Applique Getaway. And I love, just hanging out with people, whether you're in the booth or you're in the class or you're in the hall or at dinner, hanging out with people that speak that same language as you as a maker. And so specifically the embroidery industry is really, really fun, because even when I can visit, any local fabric store or quilt shop, and they're not necessarily into embroidery. That's a niche off that whole sewing industry. And so I get carried away talking about making in the hoop designs or making, embroidering on the back of a quilt. And sometimes people's eyes glaze over, but at Applique Getaway, we're all there. We're all here for it. So that's why I think it's super fun. And I've loved Applique Getaway. Every single time I've been, I've learned things. I've met great people. The first time I went, I just went as a person. We all go as people, but I wasn't teaching and I didn't have a booth, but I knew that year that I wanted to have a booth. And so I took all of the classes. And when I was in line with somebody, there was somebody that said, she was like, I know you. And I'm like, how do you know me? I had just started my business online, and I had a teeny tiny little Facebook group. And she was like, I know who you are. And I was like, oh, is that bad? Is that good? So sweet and so kind, but she was so encouraging to me as a new designer and somebody that really hadn't gotten her feet wet out in public to keep going. And so I want that experience for everybody. So that's why I'm always telling people that Applique Getaway is a really great way to get into that whole public sphere as a teacher.
It is. It really is. And I will second that the people so many people came up to me at the show and said, we like what you're doing. We're so glad you're with us. We really appreciated the videos you did, or whatever it was, or talked about women in garment decoration or some of the other stuff that I do, or this show. And I have to put these comments up because this is making me laugh. So Jeff Fuller, who is going to be one of our instructors also at Virtual Applique Getaway, says he's really excited for Virtual Applique Getaway. And then he follows up with, that makes me nervous when people recognize me. I instantly think, uh-oh, what did I do?
Yeah. There's those scripts again.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's true. But that is something I like talking about this with people who have the same experience, because it is something that I'm still learning to navigate, is that I always had a public persona, but it was kind of always online and I never was confronted with it until I started going out. I mean, we did trade shows with Enmart, but it wasn't quite the same level maybe as it is now, if that makes any sense. But I mean, doing Applique Getaway and the other shows that I went to this year, it was a whole different level of weird. I mean, nice weird.
Yeah.
But there's a whole different level of people walking up to me and talking to me like they know who I am, and I have no reference for them.
But you've been a voice that they can hear and learn from. And I think that's what's so great about the whole, like the platform that you provide to elevate women who are, and because traditionally, even that embroidery industry, you know, stores, quilt store chains and embroidery stores are owned by men. And you know what happens every time a man walks in the room, all the women swoon. And
oh my God. Alex Bernelli from Orifil, the number of women who have freaked out over that man. I'm like, I don't get it.
I kind of joke with my husband sometimes, and I call him Mr. Babymoon to my Facebook group. I mean, he really has very little to do with my business, except he's always very encouraging about it. But you know, he doesn't design, he doesn't digitize, he doesn't even laugh at me. I mean, like, he goes right along with it. But when I call him Mr. Babyman, I'm like, if you would just design a couple of things and let me throw them up there, I said, your stuff would go crazy. So he actually knows how to use. Yeah, he knows how to use all the software and digitize the things. But he's even like messed with my big embroidery machine because it's a big tool, right? So yeah, it's just funny. But what you do, you've provided the space for women to have their voice heard. And I mean, women are great teachers, and women do have good ideas, and women are coaching the next generation. So when I posted something about this it was either on my Facebook story. I don't even know how to use Instagram. So I think it showed up on Instagram because one of my kids messaged me back, which I had to figure out how to message her back. And it had to be on Instagram because I can't use it. But she was like, woohoo, women in business. And I mean, she was excited. So you have a voice that's reaching already the next generation in giving women a platform to just be a voice among in the community. I mean, we're just as valid as a male voice. And it doesn't matter, you know, what parts we come equipped with. We can all do a thing, and we all have things to share with each other.
I think that's very true. And I'm getting more comments here that are just, Jeff says, the women at my local quilt shop roll their eyes when I come in. Definitely not swooning. That's next week's topic, Jeff. You can't get ahead of the topics. And Evelyn says, you were very nice to meet you. Well, at Enmart, you were most gracious to me, Christine. Well, thank you, Evelyn. I appreciate that. Enmart was an interesting time in my life. Let's put it that way. 14 years of a lot. Well, you know, actually, yeah, it was interesting. We'll just call it that. I don't regret that I did it, but I'm loving what I'm doing now a lot. Let's put it that way.
That's awesome. And yeah, you are a person who you are now because of whatever happened in the past.
Oh, so, yeah. I mean, Enmart gave me the platform. I don't do any of the stuff I do now had I not spent 14 years building Enmart's marketing and getting known for being their marketing director. So, you know.
And you can talk with us about all the embroidery stuff too, because you know what we're talking about.
And that's still something that I still have cognitive dissonance with a lot, that I don't do any of this stuff, but I'm so much a part of this industry, and I really don't have much desire to do any of it, honestly. I mean, I admire you all immensely for what you do, but it's not my skill set.
So you're not really, like, I can't imagine when I don't get to sew, I get like, it's not even like itchy. It's almost like this, I'm unsettled and can't get, I don't feel right in the world unless I'm pushing a button on my sewing machine or pressing the foot pedal. Like I have to have those things to do. And so like, I can't imagine what life without but I know you probably have things where you have to do those. You have to get that feeling out other ways too.
Yeah. Right? I mean, writing, that's probably anything to do with words, reading or writing. I have to have my hit of words every day. Somehow, either I've got to read something cool or I've got to write something or now this is starting to be my thing too, that it's another way to do words. Just I'm speaking them instead of writing them,
which is awesome. I think
that's my thing, but I don't have a crafty or artistic bone, like visually artistic. I don't have any of that talent, which my grandmother was a beautiful painter. It apparently skipped and I didn't get any of that, but
I keep trying to get one of my kids interested in all of this stuff. And I have some that can do some things, like a couple of my kids know how to digitize. And I'm like, don't you want to do this with me? And they're like, no, not really. And I'm like, okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Well, I think everybody comes, I do. It's kind of an interesting argument. And if we had a little more time, we could maybe argue it out. But how much nature or nurture comes into it, because I mean, I grew up, like I said, my grandmother was a painter. My mother was very crafty and she liked doing all that stuff. And I just never had an interest in it. And I don't know if it's because I was a perfectionist and I didn't feel like I did it well. And I'm good at words. So, I was like, I can do this.
Well, and I think that's when I started my business. Really, it was like, what do I like to do? And what can I do? What skills do I already have? And what do I like to do? And I like to do this. And so it's amazing to me. I mean, it's still a gift every day when my website sends me a little ding that somebody bought a thing that they're going to use to go make something, I'm still just overwhelmed. I mean, that's such a adrenaline rush, I guess. And so that spurs me on to make more. I don't know when that cycle is going to stop, but while I'm on that cycle, I love it. And
I get it.
Yeah. So it's
because I feel the same way when somebody reads something or sees one of these and goes, oh, you made that point and it really meant something. And I'm like, okay, that's my adrenaline. That's, and oh my God, these comments are killing me. Evelyn says, Sheila, you put into words how I feel right now about being jittery, about not being able to sew. I believe that's what that is. And then Jeff is just being a total smartass today. I'm loving him. He says, bonus time. My son does a little digitizing. It took a bit to get him interested. Finding the right motivation was not the easiest. And his son, Adam, has a business of his own. You know about it.
Yeah.
And that's a whole very interesting thing, too, which I'm actually talking with Jeff about trying to find a couple of kids who are running their own businesses and doing a kids version of this, where we talk to kid entrepreneurs. So that would be fun. Well, do any of your kids have businesses?
Oh my gosh. So they actually do. So it's crazy. One of my daughters she is a artist, a true artist, like natural. It just is naturally in her. And so she's going into animation when she's older. And so she has her own she has a little YouTube. Not little. It's not little. It's big. She has more YouTube people than I do. So I'm like, how did this happen? But I have artists and I have people. My youngest kid, Simon, he's the one I told you that talks all day long. He told me when he was 3 years old, he said, Mom, all I need is a stage and a microphone. And I'm like, well, you need a message. So I don't know what his message is going to be, but he loves to pop in with my Facebook group and talk about kind of creative ideas. And so he told me one day before school when we were doing the COVID homeschooling, he was like, Mom, I need you to make me, he had this idea for this design. So he sat with me, he watched me draw it out. He told me where everything needed to go. And then he had, micromanaged me at the machine with, use this color yellow or this color. And so
that's funny.
he's got 4 more designs coming out that are his micromanaged designs. And so he sees the power of using the internet for business, which is awesome. I mean, like, I want them to have this idea about the world, that there are unlimited possibilities for them.
And that's the way this is all going too.
It really is. And if they can harness this power that they have, and if they want to use some of my tools, I think that's great. One of my oldest daughter that's at home, she's a senior in high school, and several years ago she needed money for something, and I said, why don't you take some of my samples, because I'm always making, and I always have a pile. It's more than a pile. I have a big pile of samples. I said, why don't you take and see if you can sell this? She sold enough money to pay for, it was like something big. It was like $250 in like a couple of days. And I was like, I'm going to hire you and put you. And she's like, no, I don't want to sell your stuff. And I'm like, so, but she had that power of, I have a thing that I can sell and people can give me money. And so, you know, I really try to encourage that idea. When one of my older kids was little and we were at the baseball field all the time, he'd stick rocks in his pocket. So I'm always doing laundry and there's rocks all in the washing machine and the dryer. And I'm like, what are you doing with these rocks? He's like, Mom, I'm going to sell them. I'm going to sell these rocks. And I'm like, I don't think you can sell the gravel from the field at the baseball park, but if you've got a little entrepreneur thing going on, then we are going to cultivate it and, you know, set you loose on the world. So
I love it. Well, I really, really hate to cut this short, but we're getting to your deadline and I don't want to make you late to pick up your kids. So I'm just going to put up a few banners here. If you want to find Designs by Babymoon on Facebook, you can find them at Babymoon Embroidery. And if you want to see all the designs, you can go to Designs by Babymoon. Last question I want to ask you. Why Designs by Babymoon? I've always wondered that.
Okay. So when I started selling on Etsy, which was in the middle of all the kids, I was in an online group that started as like a bulletin board group of email people, and they were moms that had babies, and every time somebody would have a baby, they would all say Happy Baby Moon. I love that idea. And so I was on my 5th baby moon. So I just had baby number 5, and I put my first thing on Etsy, and I was like, what do I call my store? And so I was Babymoon on Etsy. And back then Etsy had these forums. And so it was fun to chat, and people didn't call you by their name. They called you by your store name.
Yeah, you called you by your screen name.
So I was Babymoon for forever before the internet. And so I've thought about rebranding a couple of times, but I love the name Babymoon, and I love the moon, and I love, you know, the idea of serving people who have babies in their lives, whether they're grandparents, aunts or uncles or whatever. So part of my stuff kind of tends to the cutesy kind of stuff. I mean, I do serious stuff too, but I just love stuff that makes people happy. So Babymoon it is. It's still Babymoon, and until I figure out something better.
All right. And I'm going to put this up. If you want to keep up on the Rethread podcast, go to that URL and you can sign up for their newsletter. And thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it so much. It was fun, and I wish we had longer, but you know what? We'll do it again.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Christine.
All right. Thank you. Tell the kids hi for me. All right. Bye. All right. Well, that was way fun. And we could have talked for a lot longer, but children come first always. And there are a few other things I want to talk about. One of them is WeHeart.biz. Kylie Montgomery, friend of the show, is offering a new series of yoga classes. And she's offering a free one tomorrow at 7:30 in the morning Central Time, which, whoa. But anyway, that's a little early for me. But for normal people, maybe it's not. But anyway, go check out WeHeart.biz on Facebook. You can find the link to sign up for the class. She also is going to be offering a series of classes that you can buy and pay for and do every week. And we love Kylene, and she's worked very hard to get her yoga certification, and we should all go and support her if we can. So please go and check that out. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about real quick is next week's show, which I alluded to when Jeff made his comment earlier about the women in the quilt shop not swooning. That next week we're going to do something different and quite unique on this show. And that is we're going to have men on the Women in Business podcast. And the men in question are the three gentlemen from the Embroidery Nerds, Matthew, Justin, and Jeff, and Eric Campbell. And they're going to come to talk about reverse sexism in the industry and what it's like to be a man who is working in what's considered a traditionally female industry and how people react to them. And this all stemmed from, I knew Eric from before, but I met the three guys from Embroidery Nerd at Fort Worth at the Impressions Expo at Fort Worth. And we started talking, and we were talking about this subject. And I said, man, that would make a great podcast. Would you guys be willing to do this? And Jeff said, write it down. It's a good idea. Write it down. So I said, okay. And I wrote it in my little notebook, and then we worked it out, and they will be here next week. So I'm really, really excited about that. I'm a little anxious about it because that's a lot of people to try to manage, but I'm really excited. And Carolyn apparently is, no, not men. We can't have men on the show. But okay, Eric Campbell can come. Well, Jeff and Matthew and Justin are good guys too, Carolyn. You'll like them. It's going to be a really fun show. So I'm really excited and energized by this. I think it's going to be a really great discussion. And it's also going to point out the fact that it's not always women who are encountering sexism and weird opinions. Men do too. So we need to be aware of that, and we all need to be more sensitive, and we all need to get over this idea that any occupation has a gender. There's anybody who's qualified can do it. You don't have to have a particular gender. And you're welcome, Kylene. Kylene says, thanks, Christine. It is great to support this community, and I'm happy to support you. And Jeff says, Adam asked if he can be on that show too. Tell Adam he has to wait until we do the Young Entrepreneur show. And I really want to make that happen. And if I do, he's definitely going to be on that one. And Evelyn says, Eric is one of the gals. Not really. I'm not sure how Eric would feel about being qualified as one of the gals, but I think that it's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be something different. And I think it's an important topic to discuss because we tend to assume that men don't ever face these kind of problems. And it is very apparent that they do. So, and Adam says, yes, he's up for being on the Young Entrepreneurs show. So I'm really happy about that. And I guess my light just died. Oh, well. Anyway, I think we are done for today. Thank you, everybody. Please do tune in next week. It's either going to be really exciting or a total circus, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And I will see you all next Wednesday. Thanks for joining us. Thank you to Sheila for joining me. And we'll see you all next week. Bye.